Hello everyone, it is I, CM Freeze, and today I'm going to be talking about just how good will the Dallas Cowboys be in the upcoming 2024 NFL season. Now, with this video, first what I'm going to look at is the 2023 Dallas Cowboys, go over their roster, go over their stats, just to kind of see how everyone did last year. Then I'm going to go over the offseason that the Dallas Cowboys had, key departures, key additions, including their draft. Finally, we're going to look at their schedule and just quickly go over every single game we have to determine where exactly the Dallas Cowboys will be. Will they make the playoffs? Can they make a deep playoff run? Will this finally be the year that they get into the NFC Conference Championship? One last thing I'd like to add is I'm not a Cowboys fan. If you do not know me, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. However, my father is a massive Cowboys fan. My family's always been just really big into football. That's what got me into football. I love to watch football with my dad. So I've watched many Cowboys games in my lifetime. In the last 5 years, I've probably seen almost every single Dallas Cowboys game there is, except a handful of them. I borrowed this jersey from him. It's not mine. I just thought it would set the tone. If I had a Cowboys hat, I'd wear that too, but I don't own one. So, with all that being said, let's get right into the video. So, just a quick review of the Cowboys last year. Last year, they went 12-5, won their division. They actually had the most points in the NFL, and they had the 5th least amount of points scored. Really damn good, as obviously. In the first round, though, we all know that they lost the Packers in the playoffs, getting absolutely blown out. Now, if we look at their individual stats here, Dak Prescott, again, had a very good season last year. And Dak Prescott, like I said, I've watched the Cowboys for the last 5 years. And Dak Prescott, I would say about 12 games a season, looks phenomenal and literally looks like an MVP quarterback. I'm not even kidding when I say that. There are games where Dak Prescott absolutely balls out, has 4 passing touchdowns, 400 yards, looks great. But Dak Prescott inevitably will just have really, really, really bad games. It's absolutely crazy. It's the reason why he's not considered an elite quarterback. I would say Dak Prescott is a very good quarterback. What's holding him back from being elite is he'll just have 3 or 4 random games where he looks like garbage. And I'm not even talking about average. I'm talking about straight garbage. Multiple interceptions. He can't do anything. And he almost single-handedly loses his team the game. He plays that bad. It's insane. You look at the Cowboys' schedule last year, they lost to the Cardinals, one of the worst teams in the league. Dak looked like crap. They played the 49ers, a little bit different. 49ers are one of the best teams in the league. Their defense also looked like bad, but Dak Prescott looked like trash. They played another game against the Buffalo Bills, again, another really good team. Prescott couldn't do anything. So it's like against some of these upper echelon teams, sometimes Dak Prescott looks good, but then, especially like when he plays the Eagles, Dak Prescott usually does good against the Eagles. But there's just some random games where Dak Prescott looks like shit. Usually it's against a better team with a better defense, but he still sometimes can carve up a good defense. Last year he beat the Jets and he beat the Eagles. 2 teams. Now I guess the Eagles' defense in the second half of the season sucked, but in the first half of the season it was good. Dak Prescott has the ability to beat good teams. It's just, he'll have some random games where he just sucks. He just sucks, and you can't really account for that. How are you supposed to account for, oh, this is going to be one of Dak Prescott's 4 games where he just looks like horse poop and is going to lose you the game? You know, you can't really account for that. Again, very good quarterback. Very good quarterback. I definitely think Dak Prescott is overhated. Dak Prescott is overhated. If he played for 31 other teams, I think Dak Prescott would have a lot more love than people give him credit for, because last year he had 4,500 yards, 34 touchdowns. Dak Prescott had a really good season last year. Just, also had a couple of bad games in there. Rushing, Cowboys rushing sucked last year. I know specifically because I took Tony Pollard in the first round in fantasy last year. In one of my fantasy leagues, it was a 12-man league. I picked 12. I took Tony Pollard. Screw you, Tony Pollard. Absolute waste of a first-round pick. I had one of the worst teams in the league. Tony Pollard can suck wieners. Look at this. 1,005 yards, 6 touchdowns. Great. The Dallas Cowboys as a whole didn't even have 2,000 rushing yards last season. That's insane. 4,500 passing yards, but not even 2,000 rushing yards eclipsed. Only 14 rushing touchdowns. Cowboys did not have a good running team last year. They did not. Just plain and simple. Tony Pollard did not do that good at all. Dallas Cowboys rushing game was just not there. Receiving wise, CeeDee Lamb, I think, has proven himself to be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. For sure, top 10. Nobody can argue that he's outside of the top 10. I would put CeeDee Lamb in top 5. You know, you think about some of the best wide receivers in the game. CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. You know, Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably up there. CeeDee Lamb is definitely in conversation for a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, though, the next highest receiver that the Cowboys had was Jake Ferguson. That's not good. You know, that's really not good. Brandon Cooks also did decent for him too. But receiving-wise, the ball got spread out a lot when it wasn't CeeDee Lamb catching the ball. If looking at this, I would say their next best wide receiver was Brandon Cooks. He definitely emerged towards the second half of the season. First half of the season, Brandon Cooks didn't really do much, but he really did emerge in the second half of the season, and I think he complements CeeDee Lamb very well for a very good 1-2 punch between CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks. Cowboys are kind of just missing that speedy wide receiver on the team. They don't really have a guy with over-the-top speed that Dak Prescott is able to show off his arm to. That's arguably CeeDee Lamb. You know, CeeDee Lamb's going to be the one that's catching those deep balls. And then defensively, you know, Cowboys gave up the 5th least amount of points last year. Their defense could absolutely just dominate games. Their defense also had bad games too, do not get me wrong. In the playoffs against the Packers, their defense got a 40 bomb dropped on them, and they couldn't get a single stop to save their lives. Also, something that I, just doing research for this video, just found out is that Dearance Armstrong Jr. had 7.5 sacks, which was second on the team. Now, spoiler alert, that's important because he walked in free agency. But Micah Parsons obviously is a beast with 14 sacks. But then after Micah Parsons' 14 sacks, like I said, Armstrong Jr. had 7.5. And then after that, it's a bunch of 4s and 3s, and the sacks are really spread out after that. Still had 45 sacks, which is great. That's about averaging 3 sacks a game, which is really good. Last season, they had All-Pro Bland corner emerge, most pick sixes in an NFL season. Cowboys had a really good defense last year, really good defense. So now that we've gone over the Cowboys 2023 season, we saw what they had. They were a really good team. You know, they lost the Bills, they lost the 49ers, lost the Cardinals. I know they lost the Dolphins. I don't remember who their other loss was. Could have lost to Detroit. I don't know if you guys remember that Detroit game. But towards the end of the season, the Cowboys played some tough teams and just went toe-to-toe with them. Got blown out by the Bills, but they almost beat the Dolphins. Beat the Lions, but that was a close one too. So the Dallas Cowboys team, really good at beating up bad opponents, and then against good opponents, they kind of went toe-to-toe with them. How is that going to translate over to 2024? Well, offensively, this Cowboys team is pretty similar. They lost their wide receiver 3 in Michael Gallup, but Michael Gallup wasn't really doing anything. Dak Prescott still has CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott still has Brandon Cooks. Dak Prescott still has Jake Ferguson, and they have some rookies that they drafted last year who are now going to be going into the second year. With the Tony Pollard walked in free agency, he went to the Tennessee Titans, and they picked up Ezekiel Elliott. Now, the running game last year for the Cowboys wasn't that good. Like I just said, Tony Pollard barely eclipsed 1,000 yards. Definitely stat padded to get those 1,000 yards, probably. Only 6 rushing touchdowns. Now, I don't think Ezekiel Elliott is going to even eclipse 1,000 yards for the Cowboys. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. I think he'll get more than 6 rushing touchdowns. I definitely think the Cowboys are going to use him as a power back. We'll really see what happens here. Looking at the Dallas Cowboys running group, I wouldn't be surprised if they go and sign a running back in free agency. No clue who that would be. Absolutely no clue who that would be. But I was very surprised that the Cowboys didn't sign a running back in free agency. This is one of the deepest running back free agencies we've ever seen, with Derrick Henry being in there, Saquon Barkley being in there. Joe Mixon, I guess, kind of was in there. I think the Bengals cut him, or I think they might have traded him for like a 7th round pick. But Joe Mixon was also in there. Obviously, Tony Pollard. I'm blanking on his name. Aaron. I don't know why I'm blanking on his last name. The running back for the Packers that then went to the Vikings. Aaron. It's not Aaron Gordon. I know that's the power forward for the Nuggets. Aaron something. I don't know why I'm spacing on his last name. But the Packers running back. Hell, even Austin Eckler was a free agent as well. Cowboys could have signed anyone and instead chose to sign Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm very curious what the Cowboys are thinking about for their running game. Very curious to see how that goes. But the biggest part about the Dallas's team that is different is their offensive line. They lost their left tackle, Tyron Smith, who's been with the team forever now. He's been an all-pro caliber left tackle, and Tyler Biadasz, their starting center, who was a good quality center. Now, the Cowboys do still have their guards returning, Zach Martin, all-pro right guard, and Tyler Smith, who I think was a rookie last year. He was a rookie last year or the year before that. I think it was last year, though, who turned out to be a phenomenal left guard. He was a rookie last year, now thinking about it. Dallas Cowboys arguably have the 2 best guards in the league at left guard and right guard. And I'll quickly go over their draft real quick. I'll go over their draft in full, but spoiler alert, to replace Tyron Smith leaving, they drafted a left tackle in the 1st round, Tyler Guyton. We'll get to him soon. And also in the 3rd round, they drafted Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State, who I really like him. Again, we'll get to that soon. Now, their biggest hole, I would definitely say, is right tackle, as Tyrone Steele. He was definitely their worst offensive lineman last year. Maybe not their worst, but nothing near their corners. Kind of a liability. We'll see what happens with him. But overall, I think the Cowboys still have a good offensive line. Tyron Smith, as much as you hate seeing him walk, he was very injury prone towards the last couple seasons in his career with Dallas. Only ever played half the season. You can't be paying a guy that much money only to be playing 8 games a season. I do honestly think in the long run, Tyler Guyton is an upgrade. Obviously, prime Tyron Smith, you aren't going to compete with that, but at least Tyler Guyton's going to be healthy. Hopefully, he doesn't really have injury concerns. So offensively for the Cowboys, I'm not too concerned about them. Their passing game is basically the same. Like I said, offensively, they lost their left tackle and their center, but they replaced both of them in the draft with key quality starters. Not too worried about their offensive line. The running game, they lost Tony Pollard and replaced him with Zeke. So I would say a small downgrade, but their offensive running game, like I said, didn't even eclipse 2,000 yards last year or 20 rushing touchdowns. I think only 14 rushing touchdowns is what we said. So the run game might have gotten worse, but it couldn't have gotten that much worse because it was already bad last season. So their offense I'm not too worried about. However, defensively, the Cowboys definitely got worse, and they didn't really do much to address it. First things first, they lost Dan Quinn, who at times was a really good defensive coordinator. Like I said, it's weird. The Cowboys defense did really good at beating up on bad teams. But against good teams, the Cowboys defense definitely looked outmatched, sometimes underprepared. How much of that is on Mike McCarthy? How much of that is on Dan Quinn? How much of it is on both? But Dan Quinn's gone. He went to the Commanders, so now they're going to have a new defensive coordinator, who is Mike Zimmerman, who I actually think could be a really good defensive coordinator for them. He went to the Minnesota Vikings, was their head coach. The Vikings had a good defense. He's one of those guys, he's kind of like Vic Fangio, who is a really good coordinator, but when he tried to be a head coach, it just didn't work out. He's just one of those guys who's just better as a coordinator. I actually really like the Mike Zimmerman hiring. I think he could be a really good defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see if it was an upgrade over Dan Quinn or not. Only time will tell. Defensively, though, Cowboys lost some key guys and didn't really replace them. Like I said, Armstrong, who had the 2nd most sacks on the team, 7.5, he's gone. The only real edge rusher that the Cowboys got was a 2nd-round rookie, Marshawn Keeland, who, again, I'll get to him later, but they replaced him again with a rookie. Cowboys did a lot of their replacing players in the draft this season. Linebacker core got shot. Leighton Vander Esch, whose jersey I'm wearing, unfortunately, he had to medically retire. Really good player, just couldn't stay healthy. Really sucks to see. They did sign Eric Kendricks in free agency. He is kind of getting older. He did play with Mike Zimmerman in Minnesota, so I think that's just, he wanted a veteran presence there to just be the signal caller for his defense. We'll see how good he really is. That linebacker core worries me. Definitely worries me if you're Dallas. And then their secondary, they lost Stephon Diggs, who is a really good corner for him. Now, Stephon Gilmore. But Trayvon Diggs was hurt basically all of last year, and now he's back. So we'll see how Trayvon Diggs and Bland play together, because I think they play so similar. They're boomer bust players where they get a lot of interceptions, but they also allow a lot of yards. And then behind him, you got Jordan Lewis, who's okay, but that secondary is very thin if you're the Dallas Cowboys. A very thin secondary. If somebody goes down, you're kind of screwed. Trayvon Diggs, Bland, and Jordan are there. If one of those three guys gets hurt, you don't have much behind him. You do not have much behind him. So if that Cowboys secondary gets hurt, their defense can be in a world of hurt. This Cowboys defense definitely, I think, took a step back than last year. DeMarcus Lawrence also still is aging. He didn't even have a good season last year. If you look at this defense, they still have Parsons. Yes, they have Diggs and Bland, but outside of that, man, their defense could be worrisome. Their defense, I don't think, is going to be like their defense in years past. I now would like to go over the Dallas Cowboys draft picks. Overall, the Dallas Cowboys had a very safe draft, and I'll go over some of the key players, and then you'll understand what I mean. In the first round, they traded down a little bit, and then they selected Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. I really like Tyler Guyton. I really like the pick. Tyler Guyton, I think, is someone who had a ceiling at the Cincinnati Bengals at 18. Maybe could have fallen out of the first round, but I don't really see it. I think he's someone he played right tackle in college. I think he's instantly going to move over to left tackle for the Cowboys. If that doesn't work out, I could see moving into guard. Probably not, though. He'd probably move over to right tackle and just play where he's good. He's someone that didn't allow a single sack in his 2023 season. Big guy. He's 6'7", 330 pounds. Just absolute big, huge guy. He reminds me a lot of Mike McGlinchey. What I mean by that is Tyler Guyton's kind of biggest flaw is he's already kind of reached his ceiling. He doesn't have much higher to go. He's an NFL pro-ready tackle, but he doesn't really have too much more you can teach him on. He sometimes loses against the power rush move. But Mike McGlinchey is someone who got drafted 10th overall. He immediately came out, immediately was good, but his biggest issue is that he just never got better. So Mike McGlinchey was a guy that was always allowing like 4 or 5 sacks a season, which is really good, or I shouldn't say really good, but pretty damn good. But just never got better, never had that really, really good season. And that's what Tyler Guyton reminds me of. I think he's going to be a guy who allows like 4 or 5 sacks a season. He was going to be a very good left tackle, but he's never going to be a great, elite left tackle. So very safe pick. Kind of a player, not a boomer bust player, but a player that's an NFL-ready left tackle, can immediately start for him, fill in what Tyrone Smith departed with, and just be good for the Cowboys to protect Dak Prescott's blind side. Might have some rough patches switching over from right tackle to left tackle, but obviously the Cowboys aren't too worried about that. Now, in the second round, the Cowboys selected Marshawn Keelan. I'm going to be real with you. No clue who he was. And I like to believe that I knew a lot of the people in the draft. This guy must have just gone over my radar. So doing my research on him, he's 6'3", 270 pounds. He's more of an edge rusher, and he's definitely a power guy. Now, it doesn't seem like he has a lot of power moves. He's just someone that's going to beat you with raw, pure strength. Absolute freak. He's ripped. Someone that when he gets all of his sacks and he just gets pressure, he gets a lot of pressure. Didn't get too many sacks, only had 4.5 sacks last year. Gets a lot of pressure with just his size and his pure strength. Not the biggest athlete, doesn't have any finesse moves, but could complement Micah Parsons really well. Someone who is very fast and twitchy off the edge. So you'll have Micah Parsons, who's incredibly fast and will beat you with his athleticism, and then you'll have Marshawn Keeland, who can beat you with strength. He could be a very good complement to Micah Parsons. Interesting pick. I guess this is your replacement for Armstrong. So they drafted him to replace Armstrong. I think he's going to get a lot of reps his rookie season and learn behind Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. He's going into a great situation. He will be their power guy for them off the edge. Third round pick. I love this pick. Kansas State, Cooper Beebe. I shouldn't say love, but a really good pick. He basically is also a lot like Tyler Guyton. Very safe pick. He's a guy who can almost basically start right now in the NFL. He played guard for Kansas State. Really good guard. Who I don't think he allowed many sacks. I honestly didn't look at his sack numbers, but he's someone that could start right away. The Cowboys announced him as a center. Cowboys could have this guy starting as a center right now, honestly. So the Cowboys could have 2 rookies on the offensive line. They drafted some guy, Cooper, who they believe could literally start right now. He's a high floor guy, and they say it in this article too, and I agree with it. High floor guy who, again, who knows how much upside he really has. He's probably already hit his prime. He maybe can develop a little bit more because he's been playing guard, so now he's switching over to center. So who knows? Again, another transition for the Cowboys. Their offensive line early could look shaky because they're going to be having a guard transferring to center, and they're going to be having a right tackle transferring to left tackle. But they drafted NFL player offensive linemen. So with their first 3 picks, their key departures of left tackle, center, and edge, they replaced in the draft, all with guys who can start right away. Safe picks who are going to be NFL ready, just who knows if they're going to be elite players. So the Cowboys are like, hey, we already got some elite players on defense and offense. Let's just put starting caliber rookies there right away who are older, more experienced guys who can give us immediate impact so we don't have to wait and develop. So for what the Cowboys were doing, I actually really liked their draft. The only other 2 picks I'm going to go over is this linebacker out of Notre Dame, who they also drafted in the 3rd round. I knew who he was. He's going to get a lot of starting time. He is their boom or bust player that the Cowboys drafted. Very, very strong linebacker, very physical linebacker, but he just needs to be smarter. He missed a lot of tackles, just made a lot of dumb plays, but he also made a lot of great, big, booming hits. He's a power-hitting linebacker. We'll see how that translates to the NFL. And then the last pick I want to talk about here in the 6th round is wide receiver Ryan Flooring. Really good pickup for the Cowboys, I think, in the 6th round. I think he's someone that could actually see a lot of snaps just with the departure of Michael Gallup. He's kind of their Michael Gallup replacement. Now, him and Michael Gallup play differently, but they needed another wide receiver. I believe he's 6'2", 205 is what he was listed at. I think he could get some decent reps. I think he's someone that could see 400 to 500 yards, a couple of touchdowns for the Cowboys, and just learn behind CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and come in when those guys are tired for some extra reps. So we've now gone over the Cowboys team. How in 2023, they were a really good team. They lost some key players. Now, defensively, I don't really think that they addressed their losses. I think they will be worse defensively. Offensively, though, they should still be the same. Their offensive lineman issues that they lost out on, they drafted a couple of rookies who I think were 22 and 23, who could be cornerstones for them for a long time and just be really good pieces. Weapons-wise, like I said, they lost Michael Gallup and Tony Pollard, but they replaced them with Ryan Fleming and Ezekiel Elliott, which they didn't really have too much production anyways. Maybe the Cowboys will lose Tony Pollard just a little bit, and their running game might be a little bit worse. But offensively, I think the Cowboys are going to be in a very similar spot that they were last year. Just defensively, they're going to be a little bit worse. And looking at this Dallas Cowboys schedule, they have a tough schedule, man. There's no way around it. Cowboys have a difficult schedule here. They have to play the Ravens division, which is arguably the hardest division in baseball. You got to play the Ravens, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Cincinnati Bengals. It's going to be tough, man. They also have to play the Houston Texans as their extra AFC team. The Cowboys have a brutal AFC schedule. And initially looking at their schedule, week 1 at the Browns. What a game. What a game week 1 for the Cowboys, because like I said, their offensive line, who's moving around, their very first game is against the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett. Like, if you're Tyler Guyton, you're going up against Myles Garrett, or do you really want Tyrone Steele going up against Myles Garrett? That's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough for this Dallas Cowboys team. But offensively, who knows how good the Browns are going to be? Really, if Deshaun Watson's starting, who knows where Deshaun Watson's going to be? This week 1 game is going to be very difficult. I am going to give it to the Browns just because they're home. It's week 1. Both teams have question marks. Cowboys lose week 1. Week 2, I'm going to give them the home win against the Saints. I think the Dallas Cowboys didn't lose a single home game last year. If they did, they lost 1. But I know they lost at Cardinals, at 49ers, at Bills, at Dolphins. So their 4 losses I remember, I know, were all on the road. Their 1 loss that I'm forgetting could have been a home game, but I'm drawing a blank on what their last loss was. Oh, they lost to the Eagles. At Eagles. Yeah, so they were perfect at home last year, but their away record, I think, was, 5-4? 4-5? Terrible on the road. Really good at home. Literally didn't lose at home. And because of that, I'm going to give them the win against the Saints. They're 1-1. Their road record stops there, though. Baltimore Ravens, week 3. Ravens are one of the best teams in football, no doubt about it, and they only got better. They made it to the AFC Championship game last year, and then they picked up Derrick Henry in the offseason. They had a really good draft with a bunch of really good players. Ravens didn't really lose many key free agents. I mean, this Ravens team is going to be scary. I don't see how the Dallas Cowboys can beat them. Cowboys start 1-2, but then at Giants, I think that's an easy win for them, 2-2. At Steelers, looking at Steelers and home against Lions, they'll go 1-1 in those 2 games, right? At Lions at home, they beat them last year, but this Lions team's really good. Like, if it was flipped and it was home against Steelers and at Lions, I would easily just pick their home win against the Steelers and their away loss to the Lions, but it's flipped. I mean, Pittsburgh, it's only in October, so it's not that cold yet. I don't think the weather's going to be terrible. It is a primetime game, though, so it could be a little bit cold at night. I don't really know how chilly it gets there in Pittsburgh. But let's say Dallas goes 1-1. You can pick which game they win. So now the Cowboys here are 3-3 at the bye. And then their reward for that is at San Francisco. They're losing. 49ers own the Cowboys in recent years. They're 3-4. But then at the Falcons, like I said, I'm a Falcons fan. We can't beat the Cowboys. And the last 3 times we've played the Cowboys, we've lost all 3 times. We haven't beat them since 2017. It's been 7 years since we beat the Cowboys. I don't think it's starting now. Cowboys will beat us. We're 4-4. Now, the Cowboys haven't played any divisional games yet, or they did play one at Giants. And the Cowboys usually always do really good in their division. For the sake of this video, I'm going to say that the Cowboys will go 4-2 in their division. If I had to guess, I would say they're going to split with the Eagles. They seem to always split with the Eagles, so I think they're going to split with the Eagles and then go 3-1 against the Giants and the Commanders. They'll probably beat the Giants twice and then lose a game to the Commanders. I remember 2 years ago, the Cowboys lost a fluke game to the Commanders where if they won it, they, I think, would have won the division, but then just got smoked by the Commanders in the last week. So throw in a fluke loss there to either the Giants or the Commanders, or hell, even say the Cowboys are going to go 4-0 against the Giants and Commanders and then go 0-2 against the Eagles. But I'm going to say 4-2. For the sake of this video, their home game against the Eagles, win 5-4. Home against the Texans, man. Diggs against Diggs, barring they're both healthy. It's literally in the middle of the season, man. That could be such a high-scoring game. That truly could be a 31-28 game. Like I said, at home, the Cowboys are great. Just that Texans team is so good. Unfortunately, I am going to have to give the Cowboys the loss. Sorry, Cowboys fans. You're 5-5. At Commanders, I'll just have that be their fluke loss. You know, they just came off a loss against the Texans. And it was Monday night, too, so they have one less day. Dan Quinn's first game against them, 5-6. But then you'll beat the Giants, you go 6-6. Since I gave you the loss to the Texans, I'll be generous and give you the win against the Bengals here and go 7-6. I think they'll win one of those two games. So we'll go 7-6. At Panthers, easy win. They'll go 8-6. Home against the Buccaneers, 9-6. At Eagles, already gave them the win, so they'll be 9-7. And then beat the Commanders week 18 to go 10-7. So a step back from last year, but like I said, similar offense, worse defense. They also have a brutal schedule there. I would say after the Texans, if you look at their schedule, it gets pretty easy there. The last 7 weeks, Commanders, Giants, Commanders, Buccaneers, Panthers, and then the 2 hard games are the Bengals and the Eagles, which I had them splitting with. So when you end the season 5-2, I think you're worried a little bit because what did I have them at? They had them at 5-6, but then they go 5-2, go on a little winning record there, 10-7. Probably won't win the division. It'll probably be the Eagles win the division, and the Cowboys will be either the 5 or the 6 seed. So we'll see who they have to play. Maybe the Cowboys can get lucky and be like the 5 seed and then have to play the 4 seed, so the winner of the NFC South, either the Buccaneers, the Saints, or the Falcons, which they've done the last couple of years now, except last year when they got blown out by the Packers, of course. So that's my prediction. Dallas Cowboys will be 5-7. They'll have either the 5th or 6th wildcard spot. They probably maybe could win in the first round. Depends how bad of a team they play. If they truly are the 5 seed and they go up against the worst divisional opponent, I could definitely see them beating a team like the Saints or the Bucks or maybe somehow the Falcons. I could definitely see them winning that game. If they're the 6 seed and have to go up against the 3 seed, 49ers are probably going to win their division and be great. Eagles are probably going to be great. So then that would just be the winner. The Lions, that would be difficult though, if they either have to play the Lions, the Eagles, or the 49ers. If it's the 49ers, that's definitely a loss. But if it's the Eagles or the Lions, they could maybe win that. It's going to be tough. Cowboys will probably definitely be either a wild card exit or a divisional round exit. So I know, big surprise there. Huge surprise. We just went over their record. I'm thinking 10-7. They will get into the playoffs. They'll have a shot, but I don't think they're going to win their division, be the 5 and 6 seed. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you agree or disagree with my video, if you agree or disagree with my takes, please let me know in the comments down below. I always love hearing about them. And thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.